Welcome to the Voice of MPE. In this MPE talk series, we bring you fresh insights from top industry leaders and payment professionals. I'm Geoff Barraclough. I publish a newsletter called Business of Payments, and today we're talking about agentic commerce. So that's where AI doesn't just recommend what to buy, it actually makes the purchase on your behalf. So joining me is Robert Bueninck, CEO of 𝗠𝗣𝗘, one of Germany's most dynamic PSPs, helping merchants navigate this next phase of commerce. So, Robert, welcome to MPE. But before we jump into AI, for anybody outside the payment bubble, tell us about 𝗠𝗣𝗀 today and where you fit into the merchant payment landscape.
Thank you, Jeff, and very nice to be here. So my name is Robert Bueninck. I'm the CEO of 𝗠𝗣𝗀. And what 𝗠𝗣𝗀 does, it's actually quite simple. We provide an ecosystem for everything a merchant might need in order to what we call digitize their commerce. So essentially what that means is no matter where a merchant would like to sell their goods or services, we can help them with that. So from point of sale in-store to cashier software to a full PSP gateway offering with in-house acquiring and in-house buy now, pay later, which we market mostly white label. The whole suite of where you want to sell your goods, we can provide from one like a one-stop shop, so to say. And beyond that, of course, if you would like to sell your goods through teleshopping, or you would like to send emails with a payment link, or you want to deliver QR codes, vending machines, and of course, soon through agents, we are here to help merchants digitize.
So that's quite a transformation that 𝗠𝗣𝗀 has gone through. I know new leadership and new focus. Would you say, where would you say your sweet spot is now? Is it, would you say you're a full stack PSP for mid-market merchants? Is that a fair way of characterizing 𝗠𝗣𝗀?
Exactly. Our sweet spot really sits in the mid-market. We'd like to say, well, we start where, the sum up stops and then Adyen doesn't play yet. So we are really in this mid-market regional retail chains, and our sweet spot is really where it really all comes together. So regional retail chains that have an online presence, great showcases with sports clubs, right? They sell online ticketing, they sell ticketing on the stadium, they have gastro, hospitality services in the stadium, where our software suite really plays. They want to sell beers in the stadium that you can pick up at the bar, right? All these things, it really connects online and offline. And because we provide this all from one service, we can really, really make it happen and get everything together.
Excellent. So that leads us on to agentic commerce. So, I wrote recently in Business of Payments that agentic commerce could replace the classic online journey. So instead of a Google search leading to a checkout page on a merchant website, you'll have a chat-based conversation where AI has delegated spending authority, and in fact, you never visit the merchant website at all. Is that how you would define it? And how close are we to seeing this in the wild?
I would agree. It depends, of course, always on what the goods are that the customer is trying to buy. But a typical journey where you try and gather information, product information online, read different reviews, look for what product fits you best, then look for pricing options. All of that can, of course, be done by the agent. And then saying, can you please buy that for me, would be a very natural next step. And that is really where it's going towards.
And are there any sectors you think are going to move first? Travel, subscriptions, marketplaces?
Well, if you look at the buying journey of consumers, there are buying journeys that require research and price comparison, but are not necessarily fun to do. If I want to buy a hedge clipper, it's not necessarily fun. Sorry for the people that are passionate hedge clip fanatics, but that is something that you would typically, do some research, buy, get some recommendations, and go to a marketplace or a price comparison site to buy. And I think these journeys would be the first ones to be replaced. Journeys that you could argue are fun to do, shopping around for new looks for the summer, for example. That would be something that is still enjoyable to do, where you would not necessarily have that in a chat conversation as quickly.
So, which brings us, I think, probably onto payments, or how consumers will pay and what impact that has on the industry. So, as I was writing down some questions last night, I thought, well, actually, I've got an AI agent on my computer. Why don't I ask ChatGPT what it thinks? So I asked ChatGPT how it sees agentic commerce changing payments. So it told me agentic commerce will force payments infrastructure to think less about checkout and more about trust. The challenge isn't teaching AI agents how to pay, it's teaching the ecosystem when to say yes. And I would then add, and when to say no. And that kind of brings us on, I think, to consumer trust as well, doesn't it? Because surveys show half of Americans already use AI for shopping, but then they also say they don't trust it. So, particularly when we move into a European context where consumers are more privacy-minded in general, do you think they will quickly trust these agents to go shopping for them?
I think it depends on how much
convenience just outweigh everything else.
I think it depends on how much you outsource to the agent. And of course, you will always have a group of early adapters that like to experiment and a group of people that are more slow to adapt. But I think in general, if you have the agent do for you the complexity of going through the checkout, typing in details, and doing all that work for you, which you can consider as admin, but you still click the yes button on the individual item that it selects, then I think trust is less of an issue because you still have the final power. If it says, please select my entire holiday journey and book it for me, then of course there's still an element of, is it really what I want, right?
So you still need a big red confirm button that you hit and say yes.
Exactly. And I think at least in the prototype transactions that I have seen and the actual transactions that are taking place today, there is still a consumer that has to ultimately confirm that they want to make this payment, and it's not completely done by the agent.
So is there not a concern? I think we've seen this already in America, that consumers hand over their login credentials to the AI agents. So they give them their Amazon login and password, they'll give them their bank credentials, just because it's more convenient. So we're almost back in screen scraping of the early 2000s.
Yes, correct. I mean, if people can hand over a lot of trust to a digital wallet and now to an agent, I don't think that will happen en masse, but there always needs to be an element of safety that's added to it and control, because once you have the details and you have agents having the mandate to buy on your behalf, then of course fraud can be accelerated as a result.
So let's move on to the merchant end of things. So again, one of the trends we note in the US, where this is more advanced than in Europe, is that AI is tending to funnel shoppers to large brands. So how do smaller merchants like yours, I guess, mid-market European businesses, how do you stay discoverable with this new chat-based interface talking to consumers?
Yeah, and that will of course be the challenge. It's almost like the early days of Google, where everything was around search engine optimization, right? How do I make my website be discoverable for the search engines technology? And now, very likely, as it's called, GEO will be the new SEO. It's all about individual stores to being discoverable, and very likely there will be maybe in between layers or a lot of advisors helping you with that journey.
So yeah, a new domain of AI engine optimization. You'd be pleased to know I did ask ChatGPT, can you recommend me a PSP for a mid-market German retailer? Okay. And number one, it said ·𝗠𝗣, right? And it said ·𝗠𝗣.
We did optimization well.
Well, actually, it said ·𝗠𝗣. You should say try ·𝗠𝗣 first because you know the CEO.
Really?
Yes. which I thought was very, very clever of chat. But yes, I mean, I think everyone listening to this call, you should ask the agents, Chat, GPT, or Perplexity, or whatever, ask it to recommend a product in your category and see whether it recommends your product. So let's talk about payment infrastructure and business models, because if commerce becomes machine to machine, how does that change the payment plumbing that we need to work with?
In what sense?
Well, in the sense that we're used to having a customer journey, but also a payment journey, including the breakouts to strong customer authentication, fraud screening, and so on, based on the assumption that it's a person with a card. In the card world, appreciate there are other ways of paying than just cards. But how does it change when you've got a bot? Are we going to have another layer of authentication to prove that the bot is a legitimate bot and actually has consent from its owner, if you like, to make a purchase?
Yeah, of course, there will be a lot more verification layers that need to happen between these two machines talking to each other, right? And there will be protocols set up, and there's a few of these already floating around on how that authentication between the two will happen. Part of the complexity around checkout and checkout optimization can indeed go away, certainly for certain buying journeys, like what we referred to before. But in the end, for companies like us, the checkout optimization is just one part, right? It's at the end of helping them with the connectivity, helping them with being able to offer the different payment methods necessary, helping them with their settlement, helping them with their reporting and tooling, helping them with making their product sellable at different places. All of that remains the same. It just adds another sales channel, if you will.
Okay. How's that going to impact I suppose the product set that you present to your customers? Will you be evolving into like a know your agent framework? I saw WorldPay launched one of those, or maybe helping customers expose their product catalog to the agents as well.
Yeah, I think that's where we can really help our merchants, advising them, but also at the end helping them with making their website more visible for AI, helping them with ordering their data to the right MCP standards to make sure that they're findable, but also the transactions are possible with a variance of payment methods through AI. Because each payment method will need to have another verification.
It will, and that possibly brings us on to, I guess, the second last topic I want to cover, which is fraud. Because agentic commerce, I think, probably cut both ways. I mean, clearly, fraudsters are going to be using these agents and tools to generate more fraudulent demands on merchants. But equally, there's a concern that the payment industry's existing fraud controls will likely reject possibly good transactions from AI agents because they determine this is clearly a bot and therefore likely to be fraudulent. So, clearly fraud is something that UNZR and other PSPs spend a lot of time thinking about. So, how do we stop the false declines while catching these, greatly enhanced bad actors that we're going to be seeing?
I think you need to think about fraud in a different way. Fraud patterns will be different, signals will be different, and you need to build completely different fraud rules in order to not have too many false positives. Just like within payment methods, fraud rules are very, very different, and credit card fraud looks very different often than a buy now, pay later fraud. I think you need to develop a completely different way of looking at fraud, and there will be different patterns arising. And at the end, that's also what keeps payments interesting, right? New technologies emerge, new problems arise, and the businesses that are best equipped in solving these problems get a competitive advantage. So
Would you see let's start with the card world. Would you see this new model of fraud, thinking about fraud? Is this for PSPs, or do you think it's something that Visa and MasterCard need to be leading?
Well, just like today, it's a partnership between the two, right? At the end, PSPs or the acquirers very much are taking a massive chunk of it, helped by Visa and Master. And I think each block in the journey, so to say, does their part, but I don't think one can lean on the other. Because at the end, it's a chain of companies that the transaction will pass through, and each one has their ability to stop half of it.
So finally, let's talk about the governance and both ethics in a bit, really. So, I mean, if agents act on our behalf, then who's accountable when things go wrong?
Well, that of course is the very interesting question. I think as a whole, if the consumer mandates an agent, then there's of course consumer responsibility. Then there will be parties that see there's a business case in managing that responsibility, and then you probably will have some early fraud cases where it doesn't fit into a bucket, where people will point at each other. But these are all these things that will slowly need to sink in and evolve, and then come to some sort of equilibrium where it balances out.
Indeed, it's going to be fascinating. And in Europe, we clearly have a different regulatory mindset to the US. We've got PSD3 coming in, and so on. Do you think that gives us an advantage in setting the rules of this new ecosystem, or do you think the Americans will be ahead because it's the Wild West?
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, essentially, the regulational landscape in Europe will make Europe slower to adjust and innovate, which means we are a little bit behind today, and I think that will continue. But you can also have something which is called the first mover disadvantage, right? That there's a lot of learnings and expensive learnings that will be learned across the pond, which we can learn from and adapt while we get ready for the big change. So if you want to put a glass half full at it, it can also actually have some benefits. So
it is going to be fascinating to see how this plays out, and it's moving at speed. We're seeing announcements from vendors pretty much every day, although that obviously is confusing the merchants. But listen, Robert, thank you so much for joining us on this MPE podcast, and thank you for listening to those at home. This is part of the MPE 2026 conference season. That's going to take place in Berlin, March 17th to 19th. And you'll have the chance to join myself and Robert and everybody else part of the MPE family to continue the conversation in Berlin in the spring. So thank you again for listening.
Thank you.